All right, then, let's have a bit more of a reaction, a bit more of a deep dive into the South African performance in Brisbane, putting the Brisbane curse to bed, crushing Australia. What you have to say was a poor Australia team, but that doesn't take away from the fact it was a very, very strong, an ominously strong performance from South Africa, which hinted at the evolution that Rassie Erasmus is trying to bring in over this next World Cup cycle, and they're in a good place. I'm going to go through ratings, player by player, overall thoughts on the match, and I would love to hear yours as well in the comments down below. I'd also love it if you just bob a little thumbs up on the video, and if I haven't already, earn your subscription too. I'll be doing this for all of the Rugby Championship teams, so yeah, make sure you check out those other videos. But I think that is the first place to start. The context for this game is, and I take no pleasure in saying this whatsoever, a very poor Australia team. I think I described it earlier as maybe the poorest Australia team we've ever seen. And I'm not saying it's worse than at the Rugby World Cup, but despite wins against Wales and Georgia, which hinted that they might be making some improvements, it really hasn't got a lot better. They are missing some good players, Korobete, Fraser McWright, for example, but not in a good place. And just as an aside, and I'll be doing a video on this in the week, I'm a little bit concerned about the British and Irish Lions tour to Australia next summer. I was so disappointed that the Lions tour to South Africa happened in 2021 when there were no crowds and they didn't wait a year, because that took the energy out of that series. And to follow it up with what could be a beatdown potentially next summer, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope Australia can get competitive, but they look a long way from that now. Anyway, that's a separate point. I'll do a video on that in the future. Let's focus on South Africa then, who, like I say, put that Brisbane curse to bed and got a load of South Africans local there to come out and support. I can't imagine what the crowd's going to be like next week in Perth, because, I mean, am I right in saying that's where the highest concentration of South Africans are in anywhere outside of South Africa? So it could be nuts. And if you were an Australian, having just watched that performance this morning, you might just be going, do you know what, I'm just going to flog my ticket. So it could be all green in the stadium next weekend. We'll see about that. But all I do know was on this one, Australia got absolutely beasted. And for 45 minutes, had no answer, and South Africa just completely on top. They sort of let things go and it got a bit scrappy in that last half hour or so, didn't it, for South Africa? And that'll be something they'll reflect on. And that's probably the biggest, almost positive in a way. They were very, very good, comfortably won, but I've left a lot of room for improvement. A lot of things they can get better at. Left maybe 20 points out there on the park. Discipline, you could argue, is an issue with the yellow cards, although, I mean, Luke Pearce is a brilliant referee, and I feel slightly defensive of him because I know how good he is. I watch him in the Premiership all the time, but that was strange with the yellow cards towards the end. Like Australia repeatedly giving away pens on their own line, and then very quickly a team yellow card going the other way. It did feel like, would he have given that if the scores were more even, but it didn't affect the result. Absolutely fine as it was. South Africa attacked with lots of width. You saw big men in the wide channels. You saw little guys popping up through the middle. Interesting new little tweaks and tactical things. The line out with the 2-pod lift. How long till World Rugby write a new law? So they're not able to do that. So yeah, overall very good. But they won't be getting carried away. They'll want to follow it up with another win and set up those 2 test matches against New Zealand back in South Africa, which I will be flying out to watch. So if you want to follow the my next trip to South Africa, then another reason to hit subscribe on the channel. But as for the ratings for the players, my man of the match, Oxenche, for me, the best player on the park. There was a couple of other contenders, which I will come to, but for me, he's absolutely immense. And one of the things I get frustrated by as an Englishman watching my team sometimes is we have these players who do these amazing things. Kyle Sinclair would be a great example. Tight head prop with amazing hands. He's got hands as good as many a fly half, and that's great. But first and foremost, do your job. Bend over and push. Oxenche does that better than anybody, and he absolutely destroyed Australia's scrum. They were atomised by Oxenche and Frans Malherbe. And then on top of that, really industrious work rate around the park, ball carries, big tackles, and lovely hands. Oxenche, for me, best player on the pitch. Bongi and Banambi, turns out that was a tactical replacement after half an hour to bring Malcolm Marks on. That's what I understand to be the case. Therefore, Bongi didn't really get much of a chance to go beyond a 6 out of a 10. That's not a criticism. It's He didn't get a lot of time on the park. Relative. Franz Malherbe, again, do your fundamental job, and if you're a tight head prop and you go and absolutely annihilate your opponent, that'll do for me. But he had a few little tackles and extra bits around the peripheries. Actually does a lot more work than you sometimes perceive he does, but fundamentally did his basic job brilliantly well. As did Ibn Etzebeth, who, again, interesting evolution of Tony Brown's attacking system is seeing the two second rows, the two locks, in this case Ibn Etzebeth and Pieter-Steph du Toit, in those wide channels, 15-metre tram lines. Unless they're trying to turn Ibn Etzebeth into a winger, maybe. We saw Cheslin Colby basically do everything. Maybe they're just gradually going to be swapping them over. Put Ibn Etzebeth on the wing and Cheslin Colby in at lock. Wouldn't put it past the Boks the way they're coming up with some little tricks, but I loved seeing him out in those wide channels, rampaging. Couple of errors, the odd little knock on, which is why maybe it just shaved half a point off, but I thought he was very good. I thought Pieter-Steph du Toit alongside him at lock was godlike. And, I mean, options and head scratchers for Rassie Erasmus in terms of selection. When everyone's available, Ben Jason Dixon could be playing himself into a starting team, but Franco Mostert is available to come back in. RG Sneijman can come back in. Salman Murat, what happens to him when they're both available? And there's others. It's absolutely stacked, but one thing is for certain, you are starting this guy somewhere on the pitch because he is absolutely immense. Defence, arguably best in the world, but he's got more than that. And yeah, fantastic performance. Really good performance by Sia Khaleesi, wasn't he? Who looks lean. He looks lean and really mobile, not transparent or fat, like the Racing 92 president said. Yeah, very lean and playing good rugby. Also, I gave an 8 for Ben Jason Dixon. Massive workload. He was the top tackler for the Boks. And like I say, giving Rassie Erasmus some really interesting selection problems. Nice problems to have. But you can't get all of these good players in the same team. How would you accommodate them all? I think probably, if I were picking at this moment in time, I'd probably... Oh, I don't know now. Now I'm saying it. I don't know. Yeah, I'd probably, if Sneijman was available, I think I'd have him him at lock and Pieter-Steph du Toit on the flank with impact from Ben Jason Dixon off the bench. But great problems. And his performance has meant that there is a problem to solve. Elric Lowe carried hard, exactly what you want from a number 8. Make dents in the defensive line. He was the top carrier for the Boks. Always on the end, always willing to carry into heavy traffic and set a platform, and he did it very well. Into the backs then, Cobus Reinach. A couple of inaccuracies, but lots of good stuff, and the tempo he brings to the game I really like. I think him and Grant Williams, they both have just got a bit more tempo. Faf de Klerk is amazing as a defensive and a kicking scrum half, but with this evolution of the Bok game, is Cobus Reinach and Grant Williams going to be the ones? Could even Morné van den Berg come into it over the next couple of years? We'll wait and see on that. All I do know is he's got it, hasn't he? Would have been a 9 out of 10 if he hadn't have absolutely shanked that first kick. I mean, yeah, he didn't just miss the kick. It looked like a kick that I would do. So, but what I like about him, the mentality of Sasha Feinberg and Gomez Zulu, it was no sooner had he kicked that horribly, that first penalty kick, brushed it off, done, and he just went about his business being very, very good indeed. And with this evolution in how South Africa are playing, with the willingness to go wide, the transition, that turnover, defence to attack, that was one of the biggest things. And that feels like, well, South Africa have always been quite good at that, but another level of it. The fact they were keeping that width and just going, and they're just like dropping the hammer and going. And this guy, that break he made in the first half that should have ended in a try, brilliant, amazing, different passes and widths of passes, and yeah, he's special talent. As is Kurtley Arendse. The two scrum caps, Power Rangers, were awesome. Defensively, they are incredible, particularly for their size. They were, the whole back line, in fact, was just like a brick wall that Australia could not breach. And they'll actually be disappointed they let a try in the end, albeit there were a couple of yellow cards by that point, but in attack as well. How I don't know how Kurtley Arendse scored that try, and as much as earlier I criticised Australia's defence, which I would continue to do, He went and found a gap. This guy could be an NFL running back. He's that good. Damien de Allende, solid without being spectacular. Again, the fact that Australia was shut down tells you everything about the sort of job he was doing. Same goes for Jesse Creel, who didn't really have many chances on the offence for the first hour, just did a very solid job. But then in the last sort of 15, 20 minutes, the game, he started to bust open a little bit. And yeah, he's been the best outside centre in the world for a couple of years now and continued. And Cheslin Colby can do it all. He can throw into a line-out. He can put the ball into a scrum. He can have an attempt at a drop goal. And had he nailed that drop goal, he probably would have got a 9 out of 10. And no one, however big, however strong, is going to run over Cheslin Colby. And he knocked a few big Australian units back again. Villy LaRue, 7. Would have been an 8 if he hadn't butchered that first half try. He'll be disappointed about that. But as a second playmaker and a second pair of eyes and a good solid kicking game, covering the backfield, brilliant. Onto the bench, Malcolm Marks. A couple of line-out misses, which he'll want to improve on, but generally great. Gerhard Steenekamp, solid without being remarkable. Same for Vinnie Cock, gave him both a 6 out of 10. 6.5 for Marco van Staden. A few nice touches in the time that he was on. Quacker Smith, adding to the thought that he is an impact man off the bench because he was just a maniac, a Tasmanian devil when he came on. Absolutely awesome. Got the try as well. 7.5 for him. 6 for Grant Williams, who much like Kobus Reinach, tempo, but again, he wasn't on for that long, so didn't really have the chance to go beyond that. And Andre Pollard was on for such a small amount of time, standing inside centre for some of it as well, which I wonder, could he potentially be used there if they want to, I don't know. It's just options, isn't it? But I didn't bother giving Andre Pollard a score. We know what a good player he is. Didn't really need a score on this particular match. Overall, probably have to say, how would you rate the South Africa team overall? Probably give him an 8 out of 10. With the little asterisks, just a note of caution, that was a very, very poor Australia team they played against. So it's maybe easier to look good. That said, what I particularly liked about the South Africa performance, it was really cohesive. It wasn't individuals going off and doing amazing things. It was a team grinding their opposition into dust through scrum, through maul, through an intelligent kicking game, and through opportunities taken when they had them, but opportunities left as well. Maybe 20 points left out there on the park. Definitely 7, maybe 14. They should have probably scored more points. And that is the frightening thing for the rest of the Rugby Championship sides. South Africa are very, very good, but can get better. And they can get better next week in Perth. Thank you for watching. Appreciate your eyes and ears on the channel. I'm Tim. This is Egg Chasers. I'll see you on the next one.